No one told me that after divorce there are evenings so long you can actually hear yourself growing older. And I need to say this right now, before you have time to think, that this story has nothing to do with you. If you believe loneliness after divorce is just sadness that you eventually get used to, then you are missing the most important part. It isn't too painful, it's too quiet. I am 72 years old and I have just gotten divorced. Just saying that much, I know you've already filled in the rest. That at this age, loneliness is only natural. The price you pay. I used to think that too. I prepared myself for sadness, for emptiness, for sleepless nights. I thought it would be loud, obvious, easy to name. But this feeling isn't like that. It doesn't feel like sadness. It doesn't feel like pain. It stretches out so slowly you don't even realize you're changing. Slowly enough that you begin to hear things that were always covered up before your own breathing thoughts, that no one interrupts your own presence in a quiet room. And that was when I began to feel uneasy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I realized I had never prepared myself for this kind of loneliness. And to understand what it was, I had to return to the place where I once believed I was not lonely at all. That feeling only became clear when I placed it next to what I had lived through before. Because the truth is, even when I was married, I was already lonely. I just didn't dare call it that. There was someone right beside me. We ate dinner together, watched television together, went to bed at the same time. From the outside, everything looked complete enough that no one would think I had the right to feel lacking. But presence was missing. There was still noise in its own way, fixed schedules, small practical conversations about what needed to be done the next day. Familiar questions like, "How was your day?" that I answered just to finish them, without really wanting to hear the reply either. That noise was very good at covering the emptiness. It helped me avoid the question I didn't want to face, and I accepted that more easily than I want to admit. Deep down, I was appearing less and less in my own life. The hardest thing to say is that I wasn't only a victim of that silence, I was the one maintaining it day after day. I chose not to speak about what made me uncomfortable, not because I was noble, but because I was avoiding it. I didn't ask for more attention. I didn't raise difficult questions, not because I was understanding, but because I was afraid of complicating things. Afraid of being seen as a burden. Afraid of being seen as a man who needed more than was acceptable. And if I'm honest, I was also afraid of discovering that I mattered less than I had been telling myself. I chose silence because it was easier, safer, required less explanation. Loneliness, then, was like being in a sealed room, fully furnished, neat and orderly, but with less and less air. You don't suffocate right away. You can still live. And that was exactly what lulled me into sleep. I told myself this was maturity, sacrifice, what adults do to keep things stable. Looking back, I feel ashamed that I used such graceful words to cover a very ordinary truth. I stayed because it was convenient. Because I didn't have to change. Because I didn't have to relearn how to live. I told myself that life doesn't always need emotion, when the truth was that I had grown used to not feeling anything too clearly, and I believed that for a very long time, until now. Because now it's different. This small apartment is truly quiet. Evenings arrive without anyone asking what I ate, whether I'm tired. No voice from the other room. No shared schedule to maintain. No role to perform properly. This quiet is empty, but it doesn't pretend to be anything else. It doesn't help me hide. It doesn't let me take shelter behind habit or responsibility. It simply exists, clear, honest. Loneliness in marriage made me doubt myself and taught me to adjust until I fit within the space that was allowed. I became smaller, little by little, and I accepted that without resistance. Loneliness after divorce doesn't make me smaller. It doesn't tell me I need to fix myself in order to stay. It just stands there like a wide open space I'm not used to stepping into. I'm not saying this to blame anyone. There is no villain in this story, but I can't keep pretending I was only passive. There was a kind of loneliness I actively nurtured for many years, fed by very ordinary fears and an easy softness toward myself. And there is another kind of loneliness that forces me to look directly at who I really am for the first time in a very long while. That difference is what made me finally ask a question I had always avoided. If this feeling exists now, then why did I stay for so long? Only after living in this apartment for a while did I realize something I had never allowed myself to think before. The silence after divorce doesn't make me disappear. Before, I always believed silence was failure, a sign that something was wrong. When I was married, whenever silence lasted too long, I felt guilty. I thought I needed to talk more, try harder, fill that space with something, schedules, busyness, unnecessary conversations. But now it's different. This silence doesn't demand that I fix it. It doesn't ask me to prove that I'm okay. It doesn't require explanations for why I speak less. It simply exists. And for the first time in a long while, I don't have to fight it. Because of that, I've begun to hear things that were always covered up before my own thoughts, my true rhythm of living. I've realized that I prefer this quiet to turning on the television just to have noise, and that doesn't make me a failure. Then I faced a truth that is very hard to accept. Most relationships don't end because of one major event. They end after many years of people living side by side without feeling seen, without feeling heard, without feeling important. People don't leave while they're still arguing. They leave when they no longer feel the need to speak. And many people stay in that state for decades simply because everything is still fine. For the first time in a long time, I no longer have to explain my silence to anyone. I don't need to pretend to be busy. I don't need to play the role of a normal husband in a normal marriage. This silence doesn't judge me. It simply tells me where I am. And then I understood this. Perhaps we were taught the wrong things about love. We were taught that love means always being together, always sharing, always having something to say. But very few people talk about the fact that a real relationship must allow you to exist without disappearing. That staying is not always proof of love. Sometimes it is only proof of fear stretched out over many years. The loneliness I feel now is not a punishment for divorce. It is a transition, a space between two versions of myself. And perhaps the dangerous thing is not the quiet evenings after divorce, but the noisy years before, when I could no longer hear myself at all. And because of that, I began to fear something else instead. Not being alone, but returning to a place where silence is always treated as something wrong. There are nights when I still feel lonely. I don't want to lie about that. There are evenings when the apartment is so quiet I can hear the clock ticking, moments when I wish someone would ask me a very simple question. But the difference is that I no longer feel suffocated. This feeling no longer resembles being trapped in a space that's too small. It's wide. And because it's wide, there is room to breathe. I think the fear of being alone is deeply human. All of us have felt it, the fear of eating dinner alone, of empty weekends, of days when no one needs us. But being afraid of being alone doesn't mean you have to keep staying in a life where you slowly disappear. There is a very big difference between choosing to stay out of love and staying simply because you're afraid you don't know where else to go. I confused those two things for many years, and if I'm honest, what I regret most is not leaving. It's how long it took me to correctly name my fear. I used to believe endurance was maturity, that silence was the price you paid to keep everything stable. And I lived in that belief long enough to almost forget who I was when I wasn't trying to keep someone else comfortable. Now, I understand that no relationship is worth it if it requires you to disappear in order to survive. I'm not advising you to leave. I'm not saying staying is wrong. I only want to do something no one did for me. Ask you to stop sooner than I did. If you are still staying, ask yourself one very gentle question. What is really keeping you there? Love, habit, or a fear that has lasted so long, you've mistaken it for who you are. You don't need to answer me. But if you still have enough time to ask yourself that question honestly then, you already have more than I once did. And sometimes simply naming your fear correctly is the moment you begin choosing your life again.